everybody? This is Getting Gritty with it with my comrade, Reef Warlock. This is episode 11. We had an iconic legend on last week. We got another legend on this week. But Reef, you're a legend as well. Legendary Warlock. What's the deal, man?
Buddy?
How are you?
Doing well, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. I'm doing absolutely phenomenal, especially with the news coming out today. You know, that they're going to hold off a few days, to make a decision. And we want to introduce a legend, a legendary guy on Twitter who's part of Flyers Nitty Gritty now, Kerry Lee. He's from the biggest town in Delaware, the biggest town in freaking Delaware. Hello, Kerry.
What's happening, guys?
What an intro.
Yeah, right? I'm humbled.
Dude, this is where Scrapple's made from, everybody. If you guys don't know, but Delaware is the Scrapple capital of the world. Kirby and Holloway.
Is that true? Is that true?
Dude, actually, I'm from Jersey, so I have no idea. I've only been here for 3 years, but...
Yes! So awkward.
Tons of Scrapple plants in Delaware, I'll tell you that.
I'll take your word for it.
See?
Oh, man, you guys.
Good way to start the show. Scrapple. Nothing wrong with some Scrapple and eggs. Man, now I got a craving.
Yeah, dude, you're making me hungry.
Let's jump into this. Board of Governors meeting was today. For those who don't know, they have not come to a decision on an NHL draft date yet. That will be in the coming days, per Pierre LeBrun. They did say that there was a lengthy conversation about it. Reef, where do you stand? Do you want the draft to be held in June? Do you want it to be held off? What's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's unconventional, but my thought is there's a reason behind it. Whether I like it or not, I'm really not trying to focus too much on that. I'm kind of just focused on the fact that I see an organization trying to make a season happen, or at least make their draft happen. Whatever it is that they have to do, I'm honestly pretty cool with it at this point, as long as they're able to get into the seasons. As messy as things have been so far, my thought is it'll complicate things. There'll be costs to this. It's not going to be just easy, make the changes and everything's going to run smoothly. So there will definitely be costs to making these type of changes. But I'd want to know more as to why they're doing all of these things, and ultimately, what's the biggest need to pushing it forward. I mean, we can speculate. We have a bunch of real reasons, but we don't know the conversations they had internally. But there, it makes sense. Scheduling wise, you want to move it up. You want to get out of the way, and then you can let teams go. But then there's all the problems with picks and ownership and all the investment that people made prior to the draft. It's just confusing stuff as to where you're placing and who you're drafting. Inconsistent to history, but as long as they go through a solution, I'm open to it. I would feel like that.
Yeah, and that's not a bad, just having an open mind to things, whether it's in the beginning of June, whether it's the middle of June, whether it's the end of June. This is just my personal opinion. I think they're shooting for a target date of June 5th. Whether that happens or not, they're looking at typically drafts are Fridays and Saturdays. So June 5th is a Friday, Saturday the 6th, or they could go to the 12th and have the 13th, or you could go even later and go to the 19th and 20th, and then you get later to the 26th and 27th. To me, I'll give you my viewpoint in a sec, but I think this is just a telltale sign that they plan on reconvening at some point, the NHL anyway, at some point they want to restart the season. Kerry, what is your viewpoint on having the draft before the season reconvenes?
Honestly, for me, it's not really much of a big deal, in my opinion. I'm all about getting the season going. First and foremost, they could have the draft this weekend. They could have it in 2 weeks. They could have it in a month. They could have it in 2 months. For me, it doesn't really matter. I'm just more focused on what's going on with getting the season up and running again. And quite frankly, I mean, after seeing what happened this past weekend, or was it 2 weekends ago with the NFL draft, doing everything virtually, it's almost like, you know, the GMs were in their basements. They took care of everything on their end. Like nobody else within the organization really had to be involved in it as far as focus. You know, you can let the coaches and everything focus on the team, you know, and the current. Sorry, my cat just like walked in here. I lost my train of thought. Hey, what's up?
No. I totally understand what you're saying. Actually, let me add to that. Actually, I mean, what I do for personal living. I mean, virtual working. There are absolute benefits to it. You actually cut down on time. Like you have to think about it from a GM's perspective, right? They need less organization. They don't need to travel. They don't need to get dressed as nicely. They don't need to worry about every little thing that they're doing. It cuts down incremental time. There are losses like the ability to make trades, you know, conversations, stuff like that. It's more, you know, pick up the phone. It's more direct. But, you know, you lose that presence, which I don't think they'll ever want to really lose. But I do agree with you. There's something about the virtual element that allows them to manage things a little more streamlined in some ways. It's actually very authentic to a lot of people who play fantasy football, which is large portions of the country, who can empathize with that position of being in your basement, being a GM.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
No, go ahead, Barry. Finish up.
Go ahead,
no,
Barry.
I was just going to say, I mean, really, the way I look at it, as far as I'm concerned, there's really no logical reason why two things can't happen at the same time. Why can't you focus on getting the season going at this, you know, and on one hand, and then on the other hand, you know, let them take care of the draft. I mean, why can't you have both at the same time?
Yeah, my opinion is I'm okay to where, you know, the Flyers are at right now, picking at 26. I'm okay to seeing that, you know, the draft happened in the beginning of June because the Flyers are set right now in terms of their overall roster. Maybe not their makeup for next year, but we're in a really good spot right now that the Flyers don't have to make that panic deal, make that player trade that happens a lot on trade day, you know, to bump up. Now, with that being said, I came out with an interview article a few weeks ago saying that the Flyers might want to move up for Lucas Raymond. Now, if they have it in the beginning of June, that cannot – a trade like that more or less wouldn't transpire, obviously, because they can't, you know, have a player trade happen before the season was completed. That is the only downside to having the draft before the season reconvene. But where I'm at is I'm open to having the draft in the beginning of June because, like I said, you know, the Flyers. Now, I do have some worries about it. My worries are, you know, what you guys, both of you just hinted on, the virtual aspect. This could be, in my eyes, a little messy in terms of look how well and organized the NFL draft was. They had months to prepare for this virtual draft. They had at least 2 months, whereas if the NHL comes, and here we go, okay, we'll have it the first week in June. Where are we at right now? We're at May 4th, right? And the decision still has yet to be made. So then you're looking at May 6th, anywhere from May 5th, 6th, 7th. They said possibly it could even dip into next week per Pierre LeBrun. So if it dips into next week, now you're getting later and later. Okay, let's have the draft June 5th. Now you only have 25, 24 days to prepare to get all these mics out, to get all these cameras out. The problem with the NHL is that they're so broad of a spectrum. They're throughout the entire world, whereas the NFL is just glued strictly to American players, right? People or English players.
Sorry.
So those are the two aspects that I'm a little worried about. Is that getting all these mics out, the dialects, the language barriers. Okay, wear this at this time, or something, or hey, do this at this time. You had the mics here. The way the NFL draft went was just so well organized. I was like, wow. Honestly, going in, I thought it could be messy because this is the first time. And I'd give the NHL a break, too, because it is their first time at doing this. And I'm not going to criticize them or whatever. But where I'm at is that some of these decisions have to happen soon. It can't just be held off till next week or the week after.
I think that's part of the problem, right?
Well, yeah, Jamie, let me ask you this: when did they come up with the tentative date of June 5th? When was that decided?
That's just an opinion. That's just my
Yeah, he
Oh,
did say that.
okay, I got you.
He did say, in my opinion.
I got you.
Yeah,
Okay, I missed that.
when they say the beginning, when they say June, I'm looking at June 5th, Friday.
Not a bad
Right.
prediction.
Well,
it's
Well,
not a bad
19,
prediction.
26,
But
because
I
it
think
takes
Kerry,
Friday, right? So,
I think Kerry brought up a good point, though. I mean, they could have the draft pretty much at any point. I mean, they could do it literally when the playoffs start. They could do it. They could do it at any point. They could do it on a day or on a Friday, leading, right in the middle of the playoffs if they really want to. It doesn't have to be on a certain date. I think there's a lot of opportunity, actually, and I don't think that this will be the format forever moving forward. I do not think that's the case, but I do think it will evolve the current format to probably include more virtual than it has before. And I think it'll just give them a more empathy for that side of their audience, right? A lot of us who kind of cut the cord with cable, there's a different experience to a lot of us who kind of live on the internet, and I think that is trending to become everybody, but I think this will affect probably the way drafts, and there's opportunity, and I think something to realize now too, depending on when this draft is, I mean, what's going on with and I think you brought this up a little bit earlier, what's going on with the trade deadline, right? Like there would have to be some kind of rules there, like you're allowed to trade during the draft, can you trade now during the playoffs, can you trade roster players? Like, is that even a possibility? I would imagine not, right? Imagine you can only trade non-roster players or something like that.
well,
Go ahead.
remember the old rules were if you were to make a trade before the playoffs, they can't play for during the playoff run. Remember,
So it'd probably be right. It would be something similar.
Yeah, it'd be just to help you through the regular season, and then they would be abolished for the.
Well, you can say right there, like let's say it actually did happen, then right? If we had the draft and we had the playoffs at the exact same time, we can assume pretty much all roster players are kind of off limits, right? Because why would you really do that? Even like let's say somebody like Shane Gostisbehere, which I know is on big topic of conversation, but you're going into a playoff run, and the team trading for him can't even use him, even if they're trading for him for a playoff run. Right. So it's like, and obviously that might not be the case, but I couldn't see the Flyers taking that type of decision, right, to go right into the playoff. Not that I'm saying they want to trade Ghost either. I'm not really big on that idea in general, like at least throwing away a player. I think there's room there, but overall, like I think it becomes different, right? It's different trade opportunities, which could be very interesting. Maybe like moving up and down the draft could be a bigger focus rather than roster players or maybe prospects. Flyers have a lot.
I've been a big advocate with the whole. Yeah, I think we should trade him. I mean, I'm on that side of it, but I get it. I mean, really, you could view him as a roster player, though. A reserve roster player, if you want to call him that. What happens if, God forbid, Provorov, Sanheim, one of those guys gets injured? He's going to be your first go-to guy to step in, and he's more than capable of stepping in. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that first game, God, it's been so long. I'm trying to go off memory. That first game he played, when he came after having how many games did he miss?
Missed a while. Missed like a month.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I think he had a hell of a game,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody on Flyers Twitter said one bad thing about him. So
yeah.
I mean, he held his own. He was reliable. Yeah, well, yeah. But I mean, he stepped up and he was reliable. So I mean, I don't even, if you want to trade him in the offseason, and get a big return, I get it, because you have other guys on the D that can step in, Freeman, guys like that, you know what I mean? But as far as the, what's going on right now, no, I mean, I think the roster should stay as is, not to mention they have that chemistry. And that's one thing, and I've said this time and time again, man, you have a team who believes in themselves. And
like each other. They like each other a lot.
Yes, exactly. LA Kings 2012. That's all I'm going to say. I've said that so many times. I'm going to leave it right there.
Wait, too. And being around this team, this season, this was probably, I've been doing this about 5 years now, 5.5 years, somewhere around there. This was the most fun I've had covering the team because of how well they love each other. They really do love each other. Like when I say that, there's not like one bad egg in the locker room, huh?
Winning does that too.
that funny you say that? Because I asked Provorov flat out in December, what is the difference between this team and last year's team? And he said, winning. Oh yeah, winning.
I honestly think the truth is, it is a team effort, but I really do think it's a reflection. It's like they cleaned everything up, they tightened defense and all that stuff, but the atmosphere is very loose. You know what I mean? On the ice, yes, exactly. Which it's a tone set by leadership.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a reality.
Absolutely.
It's a reality.
And that's where I'm getting at is like what Kerry just talked about in terms of more or less like a log jam at the end of the season. You're figuring Sam Morin is coming back, next year per Fletcher. That's what he said. He said
he will be back.
That's what I mean. Sam Morin's back. Then you have Mark Friedman knocking on the door. You have a ghost. You have Haig. I mean, then you possibly are you going to keep Long? Not. So like he might be out the door. So like even if Braun leaves, which I think he probably will, because I don't think he'll be resigned. That's just my personal opinion. It's no sources, no nothing. I want to make that clear.
I'm with you on that.
But I do believe that he will leave, and the log jam somewhere they'll have 8 defensemen still. And where I'm getting at is like that is why I thought that this year was the best year for the Flyers to move up in the draft. And that's why I interviewed Lucas Raymond, because I really thought the Flyers would move up anywhere from 5 to 10, snag that Swedish star who's going to be that dude is going to be legit. But I'm just saying this year was the best year to do it because of the logjam we have at D. We could use one of those players. I'm not, saying that we, whatever. I'm not a huge advocate. But if the Flyers were going to do it, this was the best year to do it. And now with the draft possibly being in the beginning of June, middle of June, before the season reconvenes, fortunately, on the Flyers' behalf, they signed Linus Sandin, which we'll touch on later, to where they don't need to do this no more, So now, now the Flyers are sitting pat saying, what now, suckers? We don't need that player. We don't need those player trades. That's where I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So this.
Well, yeah. Why would we? Why would we? Right. But I do think that there is the element. I brought this up a few weeks ago, though. There is the element of some of these players, and probably not Lucas Raymond, right? Because from my understanding, he is one of the better goal scorers in this draft, but one of the better players, like skilled players in this draft. So he's probably not following the 26. Right, but I do think there's opportunity here that somebody who's not supposed to go to 26 is going to fall to 26 because there have been these travel restrictions. How many people schedule maybe their view of Finnish players, right, or Swedish players, or any place in the world later in the year? Maybe they didn't get to it. Maybe they're looking off of footage now, and it's older footage, and maybe that player got better at the end. And the last little bit here is really important because how many of these players are really 17, 18 years old, and 6 months to them is a humongous amount of time in development, right? And how much they can change physically and in their actual player development and the loss of the games and all of that. The Flyers could end up getting a better player at 26 than anybody would realize just because that guy normally would have adjusted as the rankings gone through the year. I've seen Button's rankings and I've seen other people kind of on the web, and they're not that consistent this year. Not as consistent as they used to be. And I think it might be a product of that.
Yeah, and you could put Button's picks to picks. He's a legit person.
Absolutely.
In terms of like picking,
it's based off of scouts. Scouts and himself.
He is one of the best. Wherever these prospects land, you could almost put it to the bank of where Button actually, to where teams actually select. And I think teams actually look at his board to see what, vice versa, to see where he thinks the best players are available and stuff. And that's how the Flyers are going to operate. They're going to take the best player available, whether it's a defenseman, whether it's a left-handed defenseman, whether it's a right-handed defenseman, whether it's a sniper. There's just so many snipers in this draft that it's loaded to the gills. I think you're absolutely right that the Flyers are sitting pretty at 26 because they are going to get a really good player. Could Connor Zary fall? He could. Could Dawson Mercer fall? He could. Could Jakub Perreault fall to the Flyers? Could
That's funny. That's funny that you say that because Draft Site actually has him falling to the Flyers at 25. But
great. Could Jan Mysick move up, to the Flyers, or something? Could Noel Gunler, fall?
That's the other element, right? Like, is there another Morgan Frost in this draft, right? A guy who obviously shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Probably should have been a late first round draft, right? Just off of his performance. But again, some players age at a different pace. That's what I'm saying. There's opportunity here to do different types of homework, and I guarantee that's the type of conversations they're having. Start getting creative. Like, how do you start calling coaches? Like, how many phone calls are they on right now to try to find hidden gems where before they were able to go see those kids and now they can't? They have to find some footage, or maybe maybe they'll be able to see them at some point, but realistically they won't. So they have to go from opinion, potentially. I would hope that all drafting is done by the early portion in the year, but realistically, that they're working at least, not of maybe seeing players for the first time, but refining their list, right? Of who really is our number one guy, who really is our number two, right? Maybe a guy that would have gone up your list initially, that's never going to happen. Maybe you tend to clean stuff up as you get to the finish line, right? That's going to be a different process this year. So everybody's under the same gun, though. So it ultimately probably won't matter too much. But I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting, for us especially, I feel like we won't know. Carrie, look at you. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, from strictly from a fan's perspective, throwing, analytics out the window. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I mean, I'm going to be happy with regardless of whoever they get at 26, or even if they move up in the draft. Because really, I mean, if you think about it, what need do they have to fill?
Right.
They got goal scorers. Their D is stacked. We don't even have to talk about goalie, so
that's great.
Great
points.
What do they need?
And I think that was Jamie's point, right? Why wouldn't we move up when there's really no need? There really only is an improvement. Like you said, goal scorer. Well, we could use a potential 40 goal scorer. I don't know if that's possible in getting. I don't even know if you can draft those guys really at 18. I feel like they just kind of turn out in a weird way.
Right.
Yeah, you just get lucky. This draft pretty much is a crapshoot. It is a crapshoot past pick 5. And past pick 5, anything could happen. Because like we saw last year, Detroit Red Wings went off the draft board and they selected the German defenseman. And who the heck would have thought that they would have taken the German defenseman? There's only one person to date that knew that they were going to take that pick, and that was Russ Cohen. He is the only one that said that. I would have thought that they were going to take that guy. It wasn't a shock.
I did see it rumored. Not publicly, I did see it rumored, but Russ definitely knows his stuff for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was on that.
He's another good one. That's one of my go-tos, in understanding the draft, the overall.
He loves it.
Yeah.
He's legit, He's authentic.
He's really big on prospects. He's very good on European prospects, in particular. He's like Alex Appleyard's right-hand man.
Well, I don't think they have a relation though. I think Appleyard is kind of his own thing.
I'm just saying he knows a lot about European prospects.
Oh, sure. Well, Appleyard is authentic as well.
It's the best, in my opinion, at European prospects. So, if you want to know European prospects, go to Alex. Hey, what's going on?
He lives it. He lives it. He watches. He's authentic. That's what I'm saying, man. That's the type of people you need to find. It's people who are actually watching the games.
But honestly, Kerry, you bring up a very good point because you are right. The Flyers at this particular time do not have that need. We need a left winger like today. We need a right winger tomorrow. Why? Wade Allison signed. So he restocked right wing position there. Tanner Lazinski plays center and wing. A lot of these guys can play center and wing. So really, and when I talked to Travis Konechny 3 years ago when I interviewed him, he said, I don't care what side I play. I can play left or right. It doesn't matter to me. So a lot of these players nowadays are versatile to where if they strictly are wingers, they play left and right. So it doesn't matter. Like the Flyers don't have a necessary need right now. You look at their, like you mentioned, their goaltending pipeline. They will select a goaltender like every team does because it's a crapshoot. That's one of those unpredictable positions. So it's not wrong to draft a goaltender. You may not draft him in the rounds 1 through 3, but you will draft a goaltender. Ultimately the Flyers will, whether it be rounds 4 through 7. I'm not sure, but I'm just saying. So like, they don't have a specific need. The only position I could possibly see the Flyers running into is right-handed defenseman. But that's every team, almost every team in the NHL needs a right-handed defenseman.
We do have a lot of them drafted, though. I mean, we actually did take care of that, at least internally. We actually really do not have any need except for a pure goal scorer. That is, which I don't even know if that's a real thing, to be honest with you. I think that's more of an NHL level thing where a guy can get that type of game. You see it, but you see it sometimes, but those pure goal scorers don't necessarily translate to NHL level. Go ahead, Kerry.
When was the last time the Flyers had this many 20+ goal scorers though in a season though? I mean, look at how many guys hit the 20 mark.
When Matt Reed was playing, was like in his peak. It was like 7 or 8. We had 7 or 8 of them that year.
He said Matt Reed.
He had 25 goals, and everybody thought he was a good goal scorer.
I mean, he was a really good player.
You know what's funny about
4 years?
JVR, one of those players that he starts off slow. He could pick it up like midway through the season and end up with 30+ goals. That dude, he is a good goal scorer. That's what he does. Yes. He is paid to put the puck in the net. He doesn't have to put up 100 points or 80 points. You're not expecting that from him. All you want is him to put the freaking biscuit in the basket, chip in a few power play goals here and there, and NPR.
And I think Kerry's point is like we don't really need to focus too much on having that pure goal scorer anyway, right? It's like
because you're getting all that secondary goal scoring, and that was a big problem that we've had in recent seasons past. I mean, you'd have that one or two guys that would have phenomenal years. And then everybody else was just kind of like mediocre. But now, when all 4 lines are rolling consistently, and your 4th line has the potential to play as good as your 1st line, I mean, that's huge, man. And it's showing, and we're getting there.
And it's not just the offense, right? It's the D as well, right? We even talked.
Oh my God!
They all can score, at least to some degree, but to an elite level, to at least at a very modest bottom pairing. Like even the numbers that Justin Braun were putting up were pretty good this year. Robert Haig, he had some big goals this year. We know Ghost struggled, but normally he's an elite guy. What?
You said Robert Haig. Kerry said throw out analytics, so throw that out the window. Right?
I like Robert Haig.
I like Robert Haig too.
But that's what all 3 of us do. But some analytics, not saying that they do a bad job or whatever, because they do a really good job. But my eyes aren't bad. I'll tell you that. Okay, I understand he struggled at times with D zone exits and everything else, but like my eyes are pretty good. To my eye test, he had a solid year this year. I don't need any. Right. I don't need those specific analytics because I'm not expecting this guy to be a middle pairing to a top pairing D-man. He did his job as a 5th or 6th D-man, and he did it well, to be honest.
I want to add one thing to that too. I don't remember where I saw it. It was right around the time when Haig first cracked a lineup. I don't remember exactly what, a couple years ago. I don't remember who said it. I don't remember where I heard it. But somebody said they made a comment. And this is a quote from whoever it was. The thing I like about Robert Haig is you're never going to hear his name. He goes in there, he does his job, and that's it. He stays under the radar. He's not a points guy. And I think, and see, going back to Jamie, what you were saying with the whole analytics thing too is, everybody kind of knows their role. Like you're going to have guys like I'm just going to bring them up from 6-7 years ago, whatever. Nick Grossman, a D-man who rarely got an assist, never got a goal, all the guy did was block shots and would just punish people when they cross into the, when they cross the blue line. Everybody's got that role. Like, I don't care if if
Haig is better.
Well, yeah, I know that.
I would argue Haig is better.
Like, I don't care if he doesn't get a goal or an assist. I mean, he goes in there and he does his job, and really that's what matters to me.
Yeah.
And I would have other guys. You have other guys that are going to get the assists and get the points, and
absolutely.
So he knows his role and he plays his role very well.
And that's why it's not reflected in the numbers, right? It's like
exactly.
A lot of these guys, they're kind of put in positions to fail in a way, because that position is sit in your own zone, take on coming shots by elite players. Like, how great are your stats going to look when that's the regular position for you to be in? It doesn't mean you have to go out there and kill it every time. It means you have to go and maybe make the simple play, like get that puck out this one time, 1 out of 2 times, 1 out of 3 times against elite players in these really monumental moments. And that's kind of the thing. I even say somebody like Provorov, where people jumped on him, is Provorov struggling? And I guarantee there's some group of fandom that still considers Provorov struggling on some level. But what you're doing really is highlighting this one mistake that the man makes. When you really look at the amount he plays, the amount of time he's out there, and it's like, yeah, a guy his age will make a mistake. They will probably come almost next to nothing, as he gets older. It's how it evolves. But it's important to like look at the whole of what they bring, not just that one moment that pissed you off for the. Because we all have it. Andrew McDonald was the king of that one moment. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. He was the king of that one moment. We were like, was McDonald out there?
Starfish.
Sometimes it wasn't even his fault. But he was still on the ice. And you're like, was it his fault? And it wasn't. It wasn't. But he still got blamed. You know what I'm saying?
You know what I think too, and this is something that I've talked about many times as well. And I think, okay, so look at the general manager. It's the GM's job to get the right players for the coach. I'm going to go back to Homer and Lavalette for a second. Okay, Homer had this ideology that every player, defenseman, forward, had to be big, had to be strong, be able to punish people. The old school mentality. Which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Every player, and I think that's what you're getting to here, right?
Right. Every player should be like that to an extent, and then you look at Lavalette's system, he ran a very I don't want to say fast, high powered,
aggressive,
maybe like in football terms, like a run and shoot West Coast
pace
office style, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The D-men would have to join the rush, and when you have slow guys like Grossman, what happens? You get burned on odd man rushes going the other way. So he didn't have the right players to fit his system, and then I think ultimately the players gave up on Lavalette, and that was it. But that's just my opinion.
No.
But now, I mean, we have fast players, we have skilled players, and we have a coach who knows. Yeah, man. And we have a coach who knows how to utilize all that skill. The players believe in themselves. They believe in the coach. It's reflecting on the ice. I don't know, man. It's just everybody knows their role.
What's really interesting is on our last episode with Jim Jackson, he said something that I don't know if everybody noticed, but it definitely stuck out to me. Because I've said it as well. Just it means more when it comes from him, because he's more important than I am. But the idea that this team is more talented, has more talent overall than the team that went to the finals. And again, it doesn't mean that Carter, Richards, Pronger aren't some of the best players to ever put on this jersey, but it means all the way through. And he was talking about particularly Lucas Krajicek, Ryan Parent, those were bottom pairing defenders on the team. They barely played in that playoff run, right? We had those guys. You couldn't ice an entire lineup. For the first time ever, I can say this, ever in my time watching the Flyers, there is so much depth that literally you can just consistently roll in talent. And obviously, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. Ron Hextall, a lot of his work comes into play here. But for sure, I mean, the amount of talent, it shows that everybody's got their role too. It's not just talent. It's level of depth at every level, like goaltending situation. We can't even think of holes. Like, do you guys remember that time as a Flyers fan where you can't think of what your team needs desperately?
The players have bought in, and that's what they needed them to do, was to buy into the system. They have bought in. Every single person, every single player has bought in to what Vigneault, to what Fletcher is bringing, to what Hextall brought. You know, and that's a testament to the player, because they don't all have to buy into these roles. You know, for instance, a lot of these guys are very unselfish players. If they wanted to be selfish, Coots would have 100 points right now. G would have, 100 points right now. Jake would have 100 points right now, but no, they don't. Right? You know, they just keep going back and forth. Vigneault says, okay, I need to balance the second line. So what does he do? He moves Voracek off the first top line, and bounces out the second line. They have these guys, these players, like you were saying, roles. They have these players. G, you know what? For the next few games, I want you to play center. Okay, coach, cool. Put me there. Now this guy, he's 32 years old. Has played the wing, for a few years and stuff like that. So he's settled on the wing, has become accepted to playing on the wing, and now they want him to play center again because of need, right? Or just, there's a center, that just may not be getting the job done at this particular time, that needs a reset, that needs a break, and said, or whatever. I'm just, just saying they have bought in, and it's amazing to see. Scott Lawton goes from, fourth line, third line, second line, top line. I mean, the dude is just put wherever now. Now he's, you know what I mean? When the season reconvenes, where is he going to be? These are just great problems to have. And then you have the healthy guys coming back. So that's where I'm leading into is, what are your viewpoints? Do you want the playoffs to do you want the season to reconvene? Kerry, I'll start with you.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, who doesn't? You know what I mean?
Simple as that.
I mean, especially the fact that, I mean, dude, they were kicking ass, man. They were kicking everybody's ass that they played. I mean, and they were beating top quality teams. That's the thing. And I mean, I'd have to look back, but I mean, I know like some of the games that they lost, maybe within like the last month before play stopped. I mean, they might lose by a point, a goal here, a goal there, you know what I mean? But dude, they were beating, they beat like, Tampa, Boston. I mean, they beat top quality teams. I know, Jamie, I know you said, in like 2 years, around 2 years, you see them, really competing for the cup, dude. I mean, honestly, I would not. 1 year. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
1 to 2 years, the Flyers will win a cup. I guarantee. Bookmark this, save this podcast, whatever. I don't give a darn. In 1 to 2 years, the Flyers will win the cups. This is a decade of dominance for the Philadelphia Flyers.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I really think that this, assuming, well, if things didn't stop, come to a sudden stop as they did, I really honestly truly believe in my heart, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a biased fan, I really think this was our year. I really think that we had just as a shot as anybody else.
I agree with that statement.
I mean the talent, the fact that they believe in themselves, and I've said this.
Goaltending.
The goaltending, dude, absolutely. I've said this so many times in the past.
Ryan Elliott, better than anything we've had in the past 20 years.
Yeah, but I've said this so many times in the past. There is nothing more dangerous than a team going into the playoffs that believes in themselves. That, I mean, as an opponent to that, I mean, if you don't believe in yourself, what the hell are you doing there? That's just my opinion. But yeah, I do want the season to continue. I'm sure I can speak for every Flyer fan listening to this, watching this on Flyers Twitter everywhere. I mean, yeah, we all want hockey back, man. I think we're going to get it back at some point. I don't care if it's to empty stadiums at this point. I don't care. I just I want to see Giroux lift that cup, man. And I'm going to cry like a little bitch when he does.
Love that.
So there you go.
I love it, dude. That's legendary stuff.
Hey, man, that's what I
Great.
do.
It's a lot of passion. That's what I mean. There's a lot of passion in that. I mean that.
Yeah.
I mean that.
And that's what I'll bring, man. I'm passionate. I'm a passionate kind of guy, man.
Bring the passion.
You're part of us.
Bring the fire.
Yeah, be a fucking Flyer, right?
No, yeah, right. What a great quote.
Yes.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I actually think that, it's funny to use a curse word or whatever. But if you think about Laviolette, funny, Alain Vigneault, he does kind of carry this attitude. I mean, we all kind of saw it. They talked about it. Obviously, it sounds a little generic at this point. But he himself being confident, I think, does make its way to the roster itself. Right, because it's like they obviously hold themselves to a high level of accountability still, and I think they did under the other coaches too. But it's that layer of confidence where, and again, I'm not picking on Dave Haxtell. I know a lot of people like to. I actually don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's a rookie coach put with a rookie staff and a rookie squad, and a combination of all of that is not very fair to a coach who has to come in there and also a brand new GM who also likes to do everything his way. It's a messy situation. I'm not saying he was the right coach, but this type of coach, this energy he brings, I think was well needed. I think it calmed, and maybe it's a little bit of Chuck Fletcher too. I do think Chuck Fletcher's very intelligent. I mean, I've been very impressed with everything he's done for the most part. But again, Vigneault, I think it's just that energy, the ability to talk to the media and just own it, if that matters. Like, he owns, like, when Dave Haxtell would talk to the media, people would go to the team and then start questioning the team. When AV talks to the media, people are like, "Oh, AV's got it."
He's a rock star.
Exactly. Chris Pronger did a very similar thing here, where kind of stole the focus, and in a good way, where he's like, "Don't worry about them. You just bother me." And I don't know if you guys remember the movie Miracle. I'm sure you do. Everybody loves that movie. Herb Brooks is a character in there, right? He kind of stole the focus away from the media because he's like, I don't really want them focused on you guys. Like, I don't care. I'll talk to you guys all day, right? And it's the downside of our job is that we are a distraction to some degree, or can be a distraction to some degree. I think it plays a role. I think AV placates to us really, really well. And I think it
that's a good point.
Calms the rest of the team down for sure.
Absolutely, those are very good points. Now, do you want the season to reconvene, your Reef?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny, Jamie. I think me and you were on the exact same page a few months ago, where I was like, "No, I don't want to mess with next season." But at this point, honestly, I'm going to give credit to Jason Martinez. I didn't necessarily steal his thought process. I just think he made a really good point. At the end of the day, I don't care if both seasons are perfect, but I do care that we have both seasons more than both seasons being perfect. So if I could have a season next year that's slightly delayed, but at least we finish this season off, I'll take that over just forgetting about that season and having a perfect season. Because at the end of the day, like, life is not like that. We already have lockouts. We have these non-perfect seasons in our past. It's just part of the history. So we do best with what we have, and I think that's what the NHL is doing, and I'm okay with it. I mean, I agree with everything you say, though, Jamie. The longer they wait, the bigger the risk, the bigger the mess. So they really do need to address it. If they're going to go for it, you need to go for it at a certain point. You can't just say, I'm going to go for it in June, and then it's June and you haven't decided yet. It's like things need to roll. But I'm open to it. I'm there. I'm there. No stadiums, stuffed animals in the seats for all I care. I don't even care if there is a stadium. I don't care if they play out of the practice facilities, right? And just have the games right there, reffed. Make it easy on them.
So it's funny you say that, because we mentioned that on a podcast. You remember that? I was like, spoke on Voorhees, whether it be the PPL Center, because the PPL Center, up at Lehigh, They have a hotel attached,
Right.
To the
Right.
Phantom Stadium. So we mentioned that as a possible destination, which still could happen because we really don't know the sites. There have been some leaks in terms of sites. Edmonton was quoted as
They
possibly
probably
being.
maybe they want one for each division. Maybe that's the idea, right?
This is why. Honestly, I'm going to go. I am not a proponent in the season reconvening. I'm actually on the opposite side. So I would like the NHL to scratch, the rest of the season. Will I watch because I think they are coming back? Absolutely. Do I believe that they firmly are coming back? Yes. Now, with that being said, am I a proponent for it? No. And I'll tell you why. I think it's a little too messy. I think that this thing could be rushed. The target date is May 15th in terms of reopening the facilities. With that being said, they are small group workouts. Now, when they say small group, I'd like to know, and I'm sure you guys will too, to know the number of group workouts. Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? So when will they ever practice as a team?
Is it 23?
Okay, this is right. You know what I mean? But that's a vague statement. Small group workouts. So what does that mean? So to me, this means they go on different phases, and I understand that there's 4 different phases. So phase 3 would be go for it. So that's phase 3, training camp. So you go from small group workouts, then you move to training camp, and then you go to the season, which is now July. I just think everything is too rushed. Not saying it's not thought through, because I think it will be thought through. I think these gentlemen who are running these leagues are much brighter than we give them credit for, or some want to give them credit for. You know what I mean?
Right there.
It's not very easy to run a multi-billion-dollar business. You know what I mean? Let's be honest here. We could sit back, and ridicule this and ridicule that and ridicule that. Do I think that they have done the best? There's some things I think that they could do better. But overall, I think they're doing a good job of bringing profits, to different, to the leagues and stuff. They must be doing something right or know something to bring profits to leagues, right? So, but I just think it's too messy. So where players who are overseas have to quarantine themselves for 14 days before they could attend these small group workouts. So now you're looking at the first week in June by the time they potentially hit the ice. That is if they are cleared from the coronavirus. The coronavirus is still sticking with the NHL. There's a member in the Flyers, who I'm not going to put their name out there, that, not on the team or whatever. This is a side, that has had the coronavirus. So this thing is still ramping up. You could be, I'm not a scientist by any means, but I've heard of people, not knowing they have it. And then, then they all of a sudden, then they test. And then, a few days after they have symptoms, it's just the season reconvenes. If 5 or 6 people, come down with the corona after doing all this quarantining and restarting the season, and say they're in the second round of the playoffs, 5 or 6 people test positive, and then another 5 or 6 test positive. What is plan B? Do they shut it down mid-playoffs and then say, okay, now we'll have to scratch the season, because then they look like dumbasses?
Well, the question is, what would they tell us, even if they knew that was their backup? You know what I'm saying? Because it's a good question. I think you bring up a great point.
That's the biggest thing that worries me. Yeah. What is plan B if some of these players or some of these officials or some whoever, trainers,
backups,
staff, media, or whatever,
just like injury, you lose a player to flu. Asta call the kid from the minors.
At what number do they call it quits? Because the NHL has vowed to work with the CDC. So if the CDC is seeing, okay, now they have 5. Ooh, I don't know what to do. But that's my fear. I'm always on the fear side because I love the NHL. I love this game. I want this game to grow. This is the best sport on earth, in my opinion. In my opinion, it is. So I don't want to see this league get tarnished for coming back for dollars and cents, because at that particular point, it's there's two things involved. It's pride for the players and dollars and cents. And those are the two things, and that's what I'm afraid of. I'm really afraid, and the Canadian Prime Minister has flat out said, "Hold up, our borders are shut down. You have to quarantine, for 14 days." So does that mean that the American players who are now playing in this Edmonton,
you have to quarantine if you don't get tested, but they're releasing tests. Well, I think they just released a 3-minute test. So theoretically, you can already test every one of your players, and not even just your players, your staff, and everybody on site. And obviously, that's more of a privilege thing, but that's really what we're talking about, is making it an exception for them, because that's really what we're talking about. Because you're right, there is a limit on travel, so it literally would have to be an exception. It would probably have to be a private plane flying these people back, right? Like, it would have to be the onus and the responsibility would go directly on the NHL and the NHLPA. So they have to agree on this, like, hand in hand, right? Because there is a risk, right? There's a financial risk, obviously, but there's also a health risk attributed to it, and the CDC and a public image risk. So I think you bring up great points, Jamie. I think you bring up really good points.
I'm just afraid of injuries. Like, you're
There's
expecting
so many questions.
These athletes. I mean, okay. I talked about earlier about Giroux. Would it be good to risk injury? And then you made a really good point. You brought up the Stanley Cup. This was all off record. You brought up, would he play for the Stanley? Absolutely, he would. So that's good. But like, I'm concerned that if these guys, you expect them to play in playoff hockey. Playoff hockey is different from regular season hockey.
Oh, yeah.
Different intensity, and now we're putting these these athletes on the ice like Provorov. What if he sustains a serious injury? I'm just saying, these are risks. These are all risks, and I understand that. And the players will risk themselves, because you think Provorov ain't going to come out on that dang ice.
Let's let it ride, baby. That's what I would say.
He would play with one leg. He would play. He's already played with one, arm. He will play with one leg if he had to.
Yeah.
We know he's not. We know he's not human.
Listen, the reality is everybody who gets to play in the playoffs, if they do play the regular season, they want to play, and the players who don't get to play in the playoffs probably don't want to play, because the incentive is very low. Because yeah, exactly, right. These are examples. But we are, listen, I think we should get down to our last topic. We mentioned them earlier. We kind of brushed over. We got two players I think we want to talk about, really, to end this up, because we're going to end up digging whether we want the season to start or not, but we really don't know. So let's get down to our last topic of the night, and it's really a newcomer and then a potential newcomer. So we'll start off with Linus Sandin, right? We mentioned him earlier. Obviously a big signing for the Flyers as far as somebody that people are not familiar with. He's only 23 years old. But let me go through his details here real quick. So he's 23 years old. Obviously the older brother of Rasmus Sandin, who is a first-round pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who he is a defenseman. Linus comes with a pretty big resume, at least for last year. I believe he led H1V1. H1V1. Talking about viruses in my head. HV71 in scoring in the Swedish Elite League. That is very impressive. 19 goals. It's nothing to joke about. He wasn't drafted, but at 23 years old, maybe he's coming into his own a little bit later of an age. You look at his salary cap; it's just below 800. So just to give that in perspective for you, a higher end pick or a higher end prospect like somebody like Lashinsky or Allison, they'll get somewhere between 900, right? So around 800 to 900 to that $1 million range for the cap hit. 700 to 800 are usually kind of those B-level prospects, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at here with Linus. Potential to maybe be more, but it looks like maybe spends a little bit of time in the AHL, but it looks like he has some NHL upside. Jamie, I'll throw it to you first. What do you think about Linus? What do you think about his arrival onto the team and this kind of out of nowhere signing that probably might pay off, especially in the short term?
Yeah, Sandin, he's a good player. Who more or less he's a good bottom sixer. He'll probably start on the third line. When he comes back, from the Phantoms, he'll push for a job at training camp for sure. Will he get that job? That's to be seen here. That depends on a lot on the re-signing of Derek Grant or Tyler Pitlick for that matter. Those gentlemen play a factor there to see if because let's look at years past. Or you can't just make the Flyers, right? I mean, Ron Hextall was very big on that. His thing was, and Chuck Fletcher seems to be big on it too. You have to outplay a veteran in order to take that spot. So can Sandin come into training camp, blow the doors off, because that's what he would have to do, and then blow the doors off, the preseason in order to take, a spot on the third or fourth line, more than likely the third line. I'm not so sure that it could happen right away. That's a lot to ask. Not saying it cannot, but that is a lot to ask. Now, it is great to have this type of playmaker, in the Flyers system. I think very highly of him. The guy can skate. He plays a good two-way game because a lot of Swedish players do play two-way games, and he can score. He seems to be a natural goal scorer. Putting up, 19 goals in the Swedish Elite League is, not to be taken lightly. That is like, 30-some goals at the NCAA level. I mean, let's be honest here. The guy has talent. He can skate. He can shoot. I just think that there's a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of some injuries, to Oscar Lindblom, Nolan Patrick and stuff. It's just nice to have a player like Linus Sandin, in the Flyers' back pocket, is what I mean. That was a heck of a signing, and a cheap signing, just in case. Because this guy, does he have the ability to be a Lindblom? Who knows, right? Lindblom, started at the third line, then made his way to the fourth line, and then made his way up to the second line.
But he was a top prospect at one point that just dropped because of skating concerns, right? Where this guy is very much under the radar. I would say it reminds me of Michael Raffl's situation, right? A guy who's probably going to come in. Looks like he had a big jump in development. 19 goals in that league is. And put that in perspective for people. He had 36 points, 51 games. Leader of his points on his team was a defenseman with 40 points, right? Which is also an NHL prospect at 22 years old. So what you're looking at is really a young player who kind of took a large leap in development as well here, unexpected.
He's definitely comparable to Michael Raffl because he could play the PP and PK.
Sure.
Any thoughts there, Kerr?
Well, I can tell you this. I got to start paying more attention to Appleyard so I can stay up on my European prospects. But no, I'm gonna
shout out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, I'm not the legend. That guy's a legend. But no, I'm gonna agree with Jamie though. Like, it's extremely rare for a player, defenseman, forward, whatever. To make the team right out of training camp. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think the last forward was Nolan Patrick, and before him I think was Couturier. I think every other forward has spent some time with the Phantoms, prior to coming up with the team. So, to me, it only makes sense for him to spend some time with the Phantoms, and to have that log jam that we have. You have the log jam with defensemen, you have the log jam with forwards, and then like you said, you have Lindblom, you have Patrick. Their uncertainty of, I'm just going to say when they come back. It's not a matter of if they come back; it's a matter of when they come back.
Agreed.
Again, it's a good problem to have because those two guys will be in the lineup when they're healthy and they come back. So then, what does that do for Linus and other guys that are trying to crack the team? What does that do with the Frost situation? I got a feeling though, at some point, maybe, if he spends a little time with the Phantoms, whether it's, a month, 2 months, a couple weeks, whatever, maybe he could be one of the first call-ups. I don't know. I don't know if there's anybody else that's technically higher on that call-up sheet than he would be. You know what I mean? But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. The next full season that we have, at some point we'll see him up there at some point. I would think.
Sure, totally agree.
What do you think, Yarif, about Linus?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure he has a chance to make the team out of camp. I think realistically, like you guys are saying, I think AHL time probably going to be best for him. And I think that's kind of where they're going to bring him in. Again, guys like Wade Allison, I think, have a higher ceiling. Tanner Lashinsky, and they're about the same age. They're just other kids. It's a very deep system, but it does tell me one thing. I mean, they added depth on the right side, which is interesting, right? Because why? You would think we have depth on the right side, but all of a sudden, maybe we actually don't as much as we think, right? Or maybe it was just an opportunity as a player to bring him over. But you brought up other guys like Pitlick and all that. I don't know what's going to happen with him. He could be better than we anticipate, for all we know, because we don't know what kind of jump he made. And that's what I was saying. I was like, his production at that age.
Like he's 23 years old. It's not like he's a younger guy like 18, 19, 20, 21. So he's had some seasoning. Being he's 23,
But it doesn't mean he is done developing, right? Because we know that some players develop later, right? So that could be what happened here. And I only say that because his younger brother is a high-end prospect and he goes undrafted. Not that that's uncommon, but there might be margin for error here, where maybe he was just kind of not noticed and all of a sudden maybe he changed something about himself, work ethic or something.
Look. I'm going to bring up Matt Reed again. Look at Matt Reed. He was a 25-year-old. He was a 25-year-old rookie. He had a phenomenal rookie year, and then his numbers just kind of declined as each year went by.
But he was a really good player, right? He was never going to be. And I mistakenly thought he was going to be better than this, but he was never going to be an elite guy. But he came in at the NHL ready point. Like he was NHL ready when he came in, and that's the jump that he made. And that's why he was able to go from college directly into the Flyers. Well, and never really fluctuate, right? It was just...
That's what I think it helps Sandin in terms of playing the PK and PP.
Right, agreed.
PK is valuable stuff because if you had that guy, like say a Michael Raffle goes down, who can they recall? Oh, you know what? Let's recall Linus Sandin now because we know for a fact he can play the PK. Right, exactly. That may mean that they don't recall Wade Allison. If I'm just throwing it out there, not saying you know what I mean. Yeah, right. Well, I thought he was going to the KHL. His agent comes out last week and says no, he's not going to the KHL again. That's what his agent said. Now, whether he does or not, I think the Flyers will tender him because they'd be dumb if they don't. In terms of I think they
could move him
for him. What he is, I think he needs a fresh start elsewhere, in my opinion. He's a good AHLer. There's a lot of teams like the Penguins, for instance, who would go and grab him, because that is a cheap version.
I don't want him over there.
No, I'm just saying, but that is what the Penguins would do.
I'd rather keep him.
Well, you know what I mean, though? But the Penguins are in this salary cap constraint here to where, okay, we'll go get Misha. Or something, and they'll put him in Wilkes-Barre, he'll kill it, and then get a call up, and then what happens?
My opinion of Vorobiev is if he's going to stay, all right, well, next year's a whole new season. Time to try to make the Flyers again. That's what I would say, and if he doesn't do it this time, then I would consider moving him, but as long as he's controlled.
He will be tendered. He's an RFA, but they will tender him.
As long as he's under my control, I would absolutely send him an offer. I wouldn't let him go for nothing.
Signed it or not is another story. But I don't know. It's pretty interesting. We can move on to the last topic, and that's Wyatt Kalynuk. Wyatt Kalynuk has had this big decision looming, and he has not signed yet, and he has until June 1st to do so. Now, most NCAA players have already made their decisions if they would recommit to the university or not. The Flyers have been openly acceptance of offering him an ELC. Yarief, I'll start with you. What are some reasons as to Kalnick not making a decision yet on signing the ELC, turning back to Wisconsin?
I think it's a little bit because everything is up in the air, just kind of like you were saying. Like, I don't necessarily think they know exactly what to do with like, I don't know if Kalanick knows exactly what to do because universities haven't announced what they're doing. He probably wants to play hockey. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kalanick ends up going overseas if they don't play hockey. I really don't see him signing with us yet. Otherwise, it would have happened already. I think he wants to go back to college. I mean, personally, for that last year. And then I don't think there's a rush, but I would definitely still try to bring him over if it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I would think that it'd be done already, but I could be wrong. You know, sometimes things happen last minute.
Kerry, do you think that with what Yarief just said, do you think that if he was going to sign the ELC, he would have, say, around the time of Tanner Lazinski or Wade Allison?
I mean, I think it's either hit or miss. I think a lot of guys, more or less. I mean, they all have this dream of wanting to play in the NHL, but then there's college. A lot of guys are thinking of, well, what do I do with hockey, like after college, after the NHL. They're thinking of life beyond sports. A lot of guys, will go back to college or will stay in college, get a degree or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out of my ass here because I really don't know what I'm talking about. But I mean, but then, like you said, you have the uncertainty because of everything that's, everything that's going on right now with everything being shut down. But I mean, I don't really see that being a big, deciding factor as to somebody making a decision whether or not to go back to college or sign with the Flyers. You know what I mean?
The reason I say that is because they might not play hockey at university level, right? Because their profits are different, right? So they might not take the risk of having a season at all, where a juniors team
that's a good point.
Financially would. Yeah, that's why I say that, right? And then you have European teams, college teams, maybe they're not going to play.
And he's got until you said what, June 1st? To make a decision.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know, man. He might forego college and sign.
Safer bet.
Who knows?
Safer bet to play hockey to make sure you play hockey.
Because hockey, the NHL is going to resume, whether it resumes now or next season.
Yep.
Wherever, and he'll be playing. So
economic uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's pretty much where I'm at. I firmly believe that this plays into the Flyers' hand. Whereas before this coronavirus hit, when I interviewed him in February, it appeared as though that he was in no rush to signing an ELC. He said that the NHL will be here in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. He said, it doesn't matter to me. I'm in no rush. And I take him at his word. So when he was saying that, and now this coronavirus hit, and he still hasn't made a decision, and here it's May 4th, and he still hasn't made a decision, I'm thinking now that he would have returned to Wisconsin, but giving what you and Yarief just said, the economic uncertainty right now, the uncertainty of playing, hockey, you know what? I'm gonna go play. I know that like you said, that the NHL will be here, the AHL will be here next year. That's the hope, is to restart this season. Whether it be in September, October, November, December, or wherever. We know that there is talk of the season playing next year in its entirety. For both aspects, NHL and AHL, I would presume, because whatever the NHL is going to do, the AHL would do. Right. So. In that retrospect, in regards to next season, maybe not so much the playoff, in terms of the AHL this year, but I think that this actually plays into the Flyers' hand, honestly, whereas before there was a lot of uncertainty in that retrospect. So, and Kalnick is really good friends with Travis Sanheim, and because they're from around the same, around the same town. if Kalnick is home now, Sanheim's home now too. So they're only 15, 20 minutes apart from one another. Could Sanheim convince Wyatt to sign his ELC? That could be a deciding factor, because I talked to Travis in February, a week after I interviewed Wyatt Kalnick, and we sat there at the locker stall for about 10 minutes. I actually sat in TK's stall, and I think Sanheim's was in Nolan Patrick's stall, because I think Nolan Patrick's right next to TK. And we were just talking about Wyatt for about 5 to 10 minutes there. So it was pretty neat, but yeah, we'll see. But
I like that insight.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of uncertainty right now in this world, but this show was mainly positive, and that's what we stream for. That's what we're striving for, is positivity. Forget all this negativity and this corona stuff. Forget all the negativity in terms of the Flyers players and stuff like that. Honestly, there is not one bad egg on this team, and each player has a role. Just because they're not producing, this is from Jake himself. Just because I don't put on the stat sheet doesn't mean I'm not producing. That's what he told me this year. So in terms of, because it's his two-way game, he's producing by playing an effective two-way role. So, with that said, if there's anything other to chime in, you guys chime in. But I think that this show was a really good one. And Kerry, why don't you give the faithful your information on where they can find you?
Well, for those that don't know me, I mean, Flyers Twitter, Flyers for Life 74 is my handle, or my @ whatever you want to call it. Crosby's a bitch. I mean, I'm just gonna.
For anybody, any of the fan base that looks for that audience, there's Kerry.
That's freaking awesome. But I love his profile. It says somebody's holding a sign saying Crosby is a bitch.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah. No, actually, it says the one that's up there now. It says Philadelphia. So I'll just leave it at that. But no, I had a blast. Guys. I really appreciate you having me on. It was very eventful. Like you said, lots of positivity. I like where the team's going. Like you were just saying about Jake, stepping up his two-way game. I mean, I think the same can be said for everybody on that team. The overall team defense has been so much improved since last season and the season before, and nothing but positive things, nothing but good things I see for these guys. And it's only a matter of time before we're all parading down Broad Street. So
love that. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Another successful episode. Jamie, it's a pleasure as always. We'll be back next week. Jamie and I will be on a couple other podcasts as well. You'll see us on there, and we'll keep the content coming and keep the positivity coming. Kerry, Jamie, our fans, thank you, and goodbye.
Legendary Kerry.